Hi, welcome to a Roboflow training movie. In this training movie I will explain and demonstrate how you can query a database finding results based on a query from table items. Imagine you're looking for table items you want to delete or you want to report on. Well, this workflow will show you how that works. Let's start by looking at the client. And imagine we want to query the asset usage history table, which is a field, a very common table field, which is in most catalogs. Imagine that you want to clean up the asset usage history or you want to report on the asset usage history depending on a query. So in the client you can do a search. Let's say you want to look for mail 2. You imagine that you want to clear out the asset usage history from the asset usage history table if it's mail 2. So here you see as an example of the mail 2. It has other entries, but it also has mail 2. And so the query for this looks like this. If you look in the advanced mode, it looks like this. So all you need to do is copy this query over to Roboflow and use it there to find those records. So if you take a look, I've created a Hotcollection workflow, which is a workflow that as a starting point does a query into a catalog. As you know, you can specify in Cumulus multiple catalogs in Roboflow by separating them by semicolons. And then you have the query. And this is exactly the query we saw a moment ago. You could have any query looking for anything you like. But what is important here, or why am I showing this example? I want to find inside the asset usage history field, I want to find that particular those particular records, table records that are having this value. For the query in this example, it's important that your field is in between quotes. Why? Because this is a two-step workflow. It's first looking for the records, and as a result, this workflow is processing the records. But then you need to do the search again into the table field. And the table field has to be specified here. You could parse this and figure out what the name of the table field is. That is also an option, and then you would not need this. But in this example, I just built in a field. So as I said, if that is a requirement, we could do without this field and we could just find it in here. Then what is also important is that I have built this workflow in two modes. You can decide that it only reports, or you can change it that it deletes. And the advantage is that you can run the workflow first in report mode so that it tells you what it is about to report, what it is going to delete if you run it in delete mode. When it runs in delete mode, it still reports. And so the report here is the file that it creates. I'm giving it a date timestamp so that it each time has a different field. You can put it wherever you like. I'm putting it in the log folder of the application folder, and I'm actually configured it that it is going to mail it to me. And so in this workflow, sorry, wrong field, in this workflow, in this mail configuration, I added your choice of what you have in that delete or report field in the title. I have no mail section. Normally in the mail section, you would define what information it should put in the mail for each individual record that it is processing. I'm not doing it that way. I keep this empty. I just use the body mail, which is the the HTML definition of the mail, the layout of the mail. Usually you have here a tag that picks up the value for whatever is built up for every record. Again, I removed that, but what I do is I just add here the query to explain what we were searching for, and then this is a special functionality of the mail functionality of Roboflow. You can attach a file, and I'm attaching the export file. Internally I have a variable called path of report, and I'm using that to mail it to whoever is defined here above. So let's have a quick look at the workflow. I'm gonna run it. What I also define here is that in the report you can specify here by separated by semicolons. You can say what fields you want in the report. What fields do you want from the record, and what fields do you want from the table field. So you might want to log that. And here's just a separator that you want in your report. If you want a tab limited text, you put a tab character here. If you want this, I just want this to be plain text, so I just use 2 dashes surrounded by 2 spaces as a separator. So as I said, let's run it. I do cancel, and I just do a start. And it's the first time I'm running this, so just make sure that Roboflow was running. Yes, I did not get an error. Good. So what can you see here? Catalog loop. So it's going over every catalog. There's just one. It finds 2 records, as we saw in our query, and then it processes record by record, and it creates a line with the record ID as we specified, the record name. I specified that I wanted to know the user, and I wanted to pick up the asset type. And so you can personalize this to whatever fields and whatever field you're looking at. And then it does the same thing for the second record. And then finally, it sends an email to me. So if I check now my mail, let's see, I send it to my Gmail account. So get messages of my Gmail account. Seems to be a little bit slow. I made a typo. Edit. Of course, it's gmail.com and not gmail.be. So I run it again. And we do show log. And in the meantime, I see here on the left, on the other screen, that the mail has arrived. So here is the mail. And so attach the record items that match the query. And here's my query. You can see reported records record items. And then here you have the document attached, and the document is just plain text giving you per line the information that was built up in the workflow. So this way you get a report on what is going to be deleted. If I run this same workflow now, in deletion mode, if I say, okay, I want to delete, and I run the workflow, start. Show log. You can see that it builds up the same text, but now it adds in the mail that it has deleted that entry. And if I look at my mail, In the meantime, I received another mail saying deleted record items. Attach the record item that matched the query, and you can see those records. And if we now take a look in Cumulus, you can see if I do a find, there are no more records, so it deleted those entries. So that's, of course, it did not delete a record, but it deleted the entry here in the table field, which was mail 2 before, and there is no more mail 2 in this registration. So here you go. This was an example of how you can query your Cumulus records, and from the Cumulus records how to query the table field. Just to repeat it again, it's very important in this logic that you keep this that this is quoted here and quoted there, so that you have also the parentheses here at the end, because what it in the workflow does is it searches for that table field that you specify here, so it must be an exact match in syntax with this here. It is actually searching for this piece of text in your query, and then it actually changes this query into this, so it removes this subquery into the table that it has to do. It changes the query actually into this, so it looks for that piece of text, the asset use history with a slash behind it, and then it removes that first section and adds the open the parenthesis and quote. And that's why you must be sure that in your query you have a quote here and you have a parenthesis here. Otherwise I'm constructing an invalid query. It keeps automatically the other part of the query, so whatever that is, it doesn't matter. If this is a different search, searching for a special character in a field, then that will still be there. I'm just cutting off the first part of the query and replacing it by this this part, the parentheses and the double quote. Okay, so thank you for joining this training movie. If you have any questions, you know where to find me.